And it's time for another installment of Martial Law, program intended to be for informational purposes only. The information does not constitute legal advice. The law is constantly changing, and the information may not be complete or correct depending on the date and your particular legal problem. Each legal problem depends on its individual facts, and different jurisdictions have different laws and regulations. Because of that, you should not act or rely on any information in this segment without seeking the advice of a competent attorney licensed to practice law in your jurisdiction for your particular problem. Say a guy like Marshall Chriswell, who's on the line with us. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good to have you with us here today. You know, I found out something today that I find very, very surprising, but you probably don't. And that is, some of the things that we think would be absolute givens really aren't in the minds of some folks. Like, why do people need a lawyer for their divorce or for a child custody thing? There are actually people who try to do that themselves, I found out this morning. That's not a wise course of action, is it?
It is not a wise course of action, but, as in many, areas of legal practice, as well as just generally in society, the plethora of information that is available on the internet, whether it's good information or bad information, is leading a lot of people to think that they can handle their own divorce and child custody cases, without the help of a legal professional, which is, a real bad idea.
All right, so let's find out why, because it's easy to say, but there have to be specific whys as to that would say to somebody, no, don't do that yourself. Don't even try.
Yeah, the most obvious thing is, right, you want to get things done right, and with the best possible outcome. And I think, the reason this is so prevalent in the area of family law is, and I do a lot of this work, and when you meet with clients that have, maybe recently separated from their spouse, or are, at the beginning of a child custody dispute, everybody wants to say, well, let's just get it done quickly, and I don't want anything, and I just want to get through this and put it behind me, and whatever we have to do to make it as quick and as easy and as cheap as possible, that's what I want to do. Mm-hmm. And that's and there are good reasons for people to think that way. If there are kids involved, they don't want them to see a long, drawn out, ugly dispute. People don't want to are conflict averse. Just by nature, a lot of people. And so those are good reasons to feel that way. But most people, once we've sat down and we've talked through the issues, we've talked through what the law is. They generally come around to, well, maybe this isn't the best plan for myself, my future, and for my children's future to just try to get this done as quickly as possible and as cheaply as possible. But I think that's the mentality that lends itself to, okay, I'm just going to file this thing myself, and I think I can, try to figure out the right forms to file just to press the buttons and make the process move along. Mm-hmm. But there are, of course, so many more considerations.
There are, especially when you mentioned it, children involved, and you're talking about child custody. I think there's probably a tendency to say, well, they would never deny me the right to see my own kid, but we don't know that. And obviously you want to be sure that everything is written down and perfectly understood by all parties, right?
Yeah, and it's not even, that's a big thing is, each party having the right to some form of physical custody and access to the child. But a good attorney negotiating child custody case, there are dozens of other issues that have to be hashed out, from financial issues to there's not only physical custody but also what's called legal custody, which is who has the ability to make decisions for the child and for medical decisions, educational decisions, who goes to parent-teacher conferences, what do we, and those kinds of things, and also lots of safety issues and things that need to be put into a court order. So there are lots of things that, when you sit and you talk to somebody in a consultation, they say, oh, well, I hadn't thought of that. Oh, yeah, that could be an issue. Oh, am I going to get phone calls with my son when he's with his dad? How often am I going to be able to call him? Is dad going to be able to prevent him from talking to me? Or what's, and you talk through these things, it's like, oh, yeah, these things are things that should be taken care of. If you don't have, that representation, someone to consult with, you're not going to know that stuff.
I would assume that one of the biggest issues is what if the parent who has custody of the children decides, I'm moving to another state or even another country? Absolutely.
And what if you are that parent that wants to move and you didn't talk to a lawyer and you don't know that Pennsylvania's relocation statute says that if you're the parent that's moving and you're taking the child with you, there's a specific legal process that you have to go through to be able to either get court approval to relocate the child or get the written agreement in a specific form from the other parent. And what if you didn't know that, and that applies even if there's no custody case filed, even if there's no court order. So what if you didn't know that and you just said, well, hey, little Timmy and we're moving to be with my parents in Ohio, so you can get them every other weekend though, and it'll be fine. And then all of a sudden, now you're sued for custody, and Dad says, well, you don't have permission to move, and you already did, so let's just send him back here, and he'll live with me now. Mm-hmm. So, those kinds of things.
Yeah. All right, so from the divorce standpoint itself, that obviously brings with it its own issues. There's joint property, there's living arrangements, there's child support, there are many, many different things that need to be discussed there as well, agreements come to. Take us through the basics there of things that we should be reminded of and that an attorney is certainly advantageous for.
Yeah, absolutely. And, with these cases where, people are filing, the way it's usually filed with the court is as a no contest divorce, and let's fill out the forms and get a divorce decree as fast as the law will allow us to do that. And what you don't realize is by signing those forms and by getting that divorce decree, now you've waived any right that you have to marital property that's not in your possession. You've waived any right that you have to spousal support or alimony. And so, you need to have, at the very least, you've got to have a consultation with a lawyer before you do that. There are just, as I said before, you're in the moment. You're in these divorce and child custody cases. You're in the moment. You're in a very emotional state most of the time. And you can't see the big picture. And so, you've got to protect yourself, not just for this moment, but, your financial future as well. This doesn't just apply to folks that have a lot of money. And so, from the filing of the divorce complaint through, preparing settlement agreements or, talking through what are the ramifications of all of that. And you at least want to have a consultation and decide, okay, and there are some cases that can be handled expeditiously and with, minimal cost and frustration. There are folks that have short-term marriages where there just aren't a lot of marital assets, or just folks that have reached agreements on everything informally, and there aren't those kinds of assets that we need to really drill down on. There are those kinds of cases, but you want to know if that's yours or not.
Yeah. I assume as well that since we spend so much time here talking about estate law and setting up your will, that there are great ramifications there when divorce is involved as well.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. When you're going through the divorce process, you want to know from the time that you're thinking about separation and divorce, it's another reason to consult with an attorney, because there are some protective measures that can be put in place prior to the filing of the divorce, and then, of course, once the divorce is final, you're going to want to have, if you already had a will and powers of attorney and an estate plan in place, then that's going to need to be amended, certainly. And if you didn't have one, it's a good time to start that process. But there are, definitely the interplay between divorce law and estate planning. There are, definitely some overlap there with respect to, when can you change the beneficiaries on your life insurance policy and your pension at work and things like that. And also, what happens if, heaven forbid, you get divorced and then you forget or you don't change your will? Okay, so what's and you have a will that leaves everything to your spouse and makes your spouse your power of attorney and executor. Are those things still valid? Well, those are good questions that we have to hopefully we can get those things changed before those questions arise.
I bet you that there are more than a few people out there who just neglect that part of it or forget that part of it, and it's many years, even decades, before that unfortunate circumstance arises, and then the kids all of a sudden realize, or the new spouse or whoever realizes, hey, that old spouse, that's the one that's getting everything here.
I just recently had a really unfortunate situation where a gentleman passed away, and his brother was his sole heir because he didn't have a will and didn't have children and wasn't married. So his brother was his sole heir. The gentleman who passed away had been divorced 15, 20 years ago, something like that. But on his bank accounts, which were his the biggest asset, were these bank accounts, savings, money market CDs. He still had his wife as the beneficiary, or as the beneficiary, the in trust for beneficiary on those accounts, his ex-wife, and she ended up with about $200,000 that otherwise would have gone to the brother, and she wasn't giving it back. So It was, those kinds of situations happen with more frequency than people think.
Yeah, my goodness, even spelling errors can make a difference. All right, so if somebody wants to make sure that their wishes are done right when it comes to divorce, child custody, all of these issues, and they want you to be their attorney representing them, what should they do?
You can always call me, 724-465-5826. Stop and see us in the old R&P Cole building on Church Street here in Indiana, or go online to www.westernpalawyer.com.
He is Marshall Chriswell. Thanks so much. Have a great day.
Thank you. You too.
It is the voice of Indiana County. It's WCCS 101.1 FM, AM 1160, and WCCSradio.com.